Hi, my name is Paige Phillips, and this is Module 10 for AEP 880, Why Creating an Environment Where Students are Known, Accepted, Valued, and Respected is So Vital to Bullying Prevention. So the first part of this is to summarize the articles that were provided and how they connect to our standards. The first article is Strategies for Building a Productive and Positive Learning Environment. So this article talked about creating a classroom that fosters growth, which is the goal of all educators. It also talked about making learning relevant. So when we make learning relevant for students, it engages them in the learning process and it makes it enjoyable for them to be at school. We also need to develop a code of conduct in the way that we need to treat others the way you want to be treated, which creates a positive learning environment and makes every student welcome. We also need to have positive action curriculums, and we need to define and explain what positive actions are and the benefits that they have. That way students are more likely to have those positive actions and to make everyone in the classroom feel included and welcome, and it really creates a relationship between students, teachers, and administrators. This article also talked about developing intrinsic motivation. So instead of focusing on the negative, we need to focus on changing that negative into a positive, which a lot of students do need to learn how to do, so they don't dwell on that negative, but instead change it to a positive. It also talks about reinforcing positive behaviors. We need to connect that positive behavior to feeling good. And so when students realize what that feeling of positive behavior is, they're more apt to do it. And we always need to respond with positivity. Communicating and interacting positively makes students feel more welcome and more cared about. So we always need to make sure that we're responding to them positively to create that sense of growth and inclusivity. Some strategies for creating a positive learning environment. Some of these include focusing on relationships first and school second. Building that relationship and then focusing on content is really beneficial for all students. Getting to know each student, it makes them feel included in the classroom and it makes them feel like someone cares about them. And then we always need to focus on the positive so that they can continue to do those behaviors that we praise them for. The next one is creating a warm and inclusive classroom environment and planning for all children to feel welcome. So this article talks about fostering acceptance and cooperation and creating an environment that's warm and inviting. When students feel welcome in a classroom and it feels comfortable to them, they're more excited to learn and want to learn. When a classroom is neat and organized, it helps them because sometimes students aren't as neat and organized, and to teach them those skills is very beneficial to them. We need to talk about classroom procedures, okay? So things like special traditions and classroom meetings really include all children, and it makes them feel like it's something they get to do and something they can look forward to. Classroom strategies, some things that these teach them are self-advocacy and determination skills. So teaching them these really make them feel welcome, and it also helps them with skills that they're going to need later on in life. It also teaches them reflective and active listening. And then another strategy that this article talked about was the use of children's literature to connect with them and really make them feel at home and welcome in their classroom. The next article was how feeling respected transforms a student's relationship to school. So feeling respected can change how students behave and their work ethic. So when they're respected and treated with respect, they can totally change their behavior, and it can also change their work ethic in class when they feel included and respected. And teachers need to change their mindsets. So sometimes if we have a preconceived notion of students that their mind's already set on how these students are going to act and behave, but sometimes that's not the case. It's how we respond to them. And so we need to be able to change our mindsets once we get to know these students. Okay. And troublemakers are often seen as a sign of disrespect. Sometimes we need to be cautious of labeling kids as troublemakers because that does follow them along, and teachers do have preconceived notions of them, which could be totally misconstrued, and it could just be their situation, their environment that they're put in. We just need to be conscious of those things that students are around and involved in. And we need to focus on empathetic rather than punitive ways to respond to misbehavior. So we need to always be conscious of what that student might be going through. It may not be the student is acting like that just because they're being respectful, but maybe because something more serious is going on in their life, and that's how they have chosen to respond to that. So we always need to be empathetic and think about what they're going through rather than just punishing them right away. And this creates a relationship between not only the teacher and the student, but also the teacher and the administrator, and helps these students focus on maybe things that can get them connected out in the community that may be able to help them in school as well if we focus on what's going on around them. And the last article was 3 essential priorities for school principals. So this article talked about emphasizing inclusive and a caring school environment. So to do that, we need to understand the backgrounds of all students. We need to understand where they come from, maybe what some of their views are, how they do things at home, and make sure that we understand those when they come to school and it's different from some other things that we see. We also need to foster a positive school environment or climate. Creating a positive place for them to come is very important to their learning. And then engaging students outside of school, making them feel like we care about what they do outside of school is also important to creating relationships and a sense of community within our school. And educators need to also embrace leadership roles, so trust the teachers and staff that they are creating positive classroom environments where students can grow. And then we also need to collaborate with our community as educational leaders. The educational leaders are vocal advocates for our community needs. They see exactly what students in the classroom need and can reach out to the community members and help provide them with the resources necessary for them to be successful in school. The next is a summary of articles on bullying prevention. The first article is why teaching kindness in schools is essential to reducing bullying. So kindness is learned by feeling so that we can reproduce that feeling. As long as kids understand they feel kindness towards them, they are able to reciprocate that. Being kind helps form connections in relationships. Being kind increases popularity, and then it also can change students' actions. So when we're kind to others, people feel that and they can reciprocate that action and are less likely to be rude and mean and things that include bullying. So that helps form relationships, and kindness is a key part to helping reduce bullying. The next article is 5 ways to stop bullying and move into action. So this covers the Not in Our School solutions and strategies to preventing bullying. These talk about focusing on the problem that results from bullying, students leading an anti-bullying campaign or having buttons, meetings, things like that. It talks about uniting a school community so everybody is on the same page with bullying, that it's not acceptable. And then it also talks about fostering inclusion and acceptance, making sure that everyone in the school is involved and has a place, and then educating the community on maybe the things that bullying includes so that everybody can have an eye out on it and make sure that it's not involved in their school. The next article was what are the best ways to prevent bullying? This article talks about how programs that rely on consequences and no tolerance are not as effective as some other programs that schools have implemented. It also talks about how peer meditation and having kids work it out can actually increase the problem rather than decrease it. So there's 2 research tested approaches that this article talks about, which is creating a positive school climate and social emotional learning. So with creating a positive school climate, this helps foster a healthy development. It provides leadership for students and teachers and administrators. And then we also need to teach preparedness, so how we can create a positive school climate as teachers and educators. And then social and emotional learning, we need to be able to teach the skills of self-management, self-awareness, social awareness, relationship management, and responsible decision-making, which can all help lead to less bullying. Okay? And it reduces depression, anxiety, bullying, all those similar things, while also increasing academic success and leadership throughout the school. And sometimes it's this article talks about how it's normal to normal development is confused with bullying in younger ages, where they don't realize what they're necessarily doing, or that parents don't realize that losing friends is a part of growing up. So it's just something that gets confused a little bit. And bullying is not just a problem in students, it's a human problem. The next article was 6 ways educators can prevent bullying in schools. So some of these ways were to teach kindness and empathy, which is a practice conflict resolution. So teach kids how to respond to those. The next is to connect, to create a safe place for students to be heard. Third is to identify gateway behaviors. These things include name calling, eye rolling, getting others to laugh at one another, similar things to that. The next is using the arts to create context. So visual arts sometimes help guide discussions, which foster a positive school environment that allows people to get together and talk about what's happening to them. And then we need to minimize teacher bullying or negative reactions. So teachers, students watch them all the time, and if they talk bad about another teacher or someone they work with, more students are apt to do that. So we just need to be conscious of those actions that we are doing. And then we also need to put kids in simulations, how they would handle situations. The next is a summary of the data that was provided. So the one that occurs the most is name calling at 44.2%, and it usually happens the most in classrooms and hallways and lockers. So some of the missing procedures and policies, if it's in the classroom, we're obviously missing a positive classroom environment and structure. Because if name calling is being allowed in the classroom, then maybe the educator isn't necessarily covering all the bases and setting up a positive classroom environment where that's not allowed. If it's happening in the hallways and lockers, teacher presence in the hallway is missing. Kids are less likely to do it if an adult is around. So if teachers can just be present in the hallway, I think that would be less likely to happen in the hallways. And so when the steps have been taken, positive relationships are formed when the steps have been taken to reduce bullying. Students can form connections with not only their teachers, but with one another. Students are able to observe positive behavior, whether it be with other students or with teachers. And then a positive classroom environment is formed, which is essential to all students' learning. And then here are my references.